basic economics really matter, and they matter because, not that it's bad that rich people are getting richer, it's bad that everyone else is getting poorer. And it's especially bad that young people can't afford homes. Let me just put a very precise point on this. If you want a measure of how your economy is doing, I personally favor eliminating GDP as a measure. I don't even know what that is. It's clearly not relevant. They tell me Japan has a stagnant GDP. Have you been to Tokyo? It's the single most radicalizing experience you'll ever have because it's just so nice. You lost the war? Really? Can we lose a war and wind up like this? GDP. No. I don't know what even that is. The total economic activity. Oh, no. My measure is really simple. I got a bunch of kids. Can they afford houses with full-time jobs at like 27, 28? And the answer is no way. And the answer is that 35-year-olds with really good jobs can't afford a house unless they stretch and go deep into debt. And I just think that's a total disaster. That's a complete disaster. Why? Two reasons. One, if people don't own things, they don't feel ownership of the country they're in. And the country gets super volatile because people feel like they've got nothing to lose. When you have a lawn, trust me, you're thinking long term. Second, it's really hard to have a family without a house. It is. It's like super fun to live in an apartment if, there's like a bar downstairs, you're in a cool neighborhood. I'm in East Village. It's so cool. Try to have 3 kids. You're not going to have 3 kids there. You can't. Nobody wants to raise their kids in that neighborhood. Nobody wants to raise their kids in an apartment. People do it because they have to. Nobody wants to. People want a little house, not some McMansion, just a little normal house. That is the actual American dream. And that is what is totally unattainable for young people. And so the only young people in general that you will ever meet who have houses are young people whose parents help them. And God bless their parents. That's a perfectly great thing to do for your kids. But most people's parents can't afford to do that because they're already in debt from their pointless college degree. So that is a national emergency. One of the reasons it's happening is because normal people with normal jobs no longer believe they can win in this system, and that all the money is going to the worst people. And no one even stops to ask what the hell is going on. But what I'm saying is that our leadership class should say something about it and should assign a moral value to it. And if you're getting rich by loaning money to people at incredibly high interest rates, that's something you're going to have to talk to God about. That is not good. That is not virtuous. That's disgusting. And the fact that nobody feels free to say that, nobody feels like you can just say like 30% on a credit card? Why is anybody paying a credit card bill? Because they always say, like, if the very rich, if you borrow enough from a bank, you're kind of in charge of the bank because they need you to pay them back, so they're totally happy to negotiate terms with you. But if you borrow a little bit from the bank, they'll just take your house away. So what if people got together and just decided, wait a second, 30% interest is a lot, especially since they're pushing credit cards on kids like crack.
Wow. That is Tucker Carlson at the Turning Point USA event. I am no fan of Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is one of the, well, I take that back. He is the most prominent right-wing conservative commentator in the country. He had the #1 show on Fox News before they kicked him off. And now he has the #1 podcast, if I'm not mistaken, one of the biggest podcasts, political podcast in America. Why is that news? That is news because what he is saying is important. Now, I have to disclose to everybody I'm a left-wing populist. I always tell people I'm a New Deal, Great Society populist. Roosevelt, LBJ populist. With a little bit of, sort of Western, European social democrat thrown in, okay? But I believe you do need to understand your opponent in order to be able to do battle. And what I'm listening to from Tucker Carlson in that speech right there, where he's going down the list talking about the GDP not being an adequate way to judge how people are doing economically in America, looking at places like Japan and how they're living and wondering what we're doing wrong, talking about banks and the usury and the exorbitant rates. These are all things that again, we used to talk about. The left used to talk about a lot. These are things Franklin Roosevelt talked about, folks. That is why he put Glass-Steagall in place to keep commercial banks and investment banks separate in the 1930s. This is why he went so hard. He sicked Ferdinand Pecora on Wall Street, on the banksters. Hell, he coined the term banksters. This is what the Democratic Party used to be when they were good, when they did things that improved people's lives. This is why Franklin Roosevelt is the only president we've ever had to get reelected 4 times. He got elected 4 times. And it would have been 5 had he not died. There is a reason the Democrats controlled our government for 50 years, from Roosevelt through Reagan. It was this. And now, this is concerning for me. Because I'm hearing a conservative Republican get to this place where we can't get the mainstream of the corporate Democratic Party to get to this place. And I've been sounding the alarm about this for a while now. The Democrats have consumed themselves with identity politics issues, the gay stuff, the trans stuff, abortion, all this talk about representation and diversity and all this. The Republicans, the right, are talking about getting married. He literally said we should be measuring how our economy is doing by whether 27 and 28-year-olds can get married and buy a house. Again, that wouldn't have been out of place with Franklin Roosevelt. At all. Wouldn't have been out of place with Franklin Roosevelt. But the corporate liberal Democratic Party has sold its soul. And now we have a bunch of Wall Street puppets of the establishment who won't say stuff like this out loud anymore. They won't say stuff like this. Bernie Sanders is probably the only one who said this, and the Democrats did everything in their power to make sure that he couldn't be president. And now Zoran Mondani, or whatever his name is, in New York, who just won the Democratic primary, now he's got the establishment of the Democratic Party, Cuomo and Adams and all these, Bill Clinton endorsed Cuomo. He's got the establishment after him for just saying stuff like this. The most successful America ever was for working class and poor people, and especially for black people, was as a social democracy from the 1930s to the 1970s. Period. That's a fact. That's not my opinion. The working class organized labor was never stronger. Hell, the only time period in this country's history in which the black community ever our wages outpaced everybody else's was between the 1920s and the 1960s, when we limited immigration, and when we, as a society, became a social democracy that invested in our working class and invested in our people. And now, again, we can't get the mainstream of the sellout corporate liberal Democratic Party to talk about this stuff. They're too busy talking about trans issues and abortion. And now the Republicans are coming back around to this. This is a heavily Democratic area. Hell, Gary is at one point was the second most liberal city in America after Berkeley, California. I don't know if it still is, but I'm guessing it got to still be close to the top. This should be a state of emergency. for anybody who calls themselves a Democrat or who votes Democrat. And I know a lot of Democratic politicians listen to the show. That's one reason why I wanted to do this segment. Why I started the show off with this segment. Is because you cannot let the Republicans get to the left of you on this topic. You can't let them be the ones saying, yeah, screw what the banks think. Screw what big business thinks. We got to make sure 27 and 28-year-olds and people by 35 can get married and have a house. Screw what the capitalists and the corporatists and all these other people say. That's what Roosevelt said. You cannot let people like Tucker Carlson outflank you on this one. And they are. They are. Nancy Pelosi won't say this. Barack Obama never said this. Joe Biden never said this. Kamala Harris ain't never saying any of this. Why? And why the people who do talk like this, Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mamdani and the people like that, why do they have to, why you have more smoke for them than you have for the Republicans? This is insane. The Republicans are talking about having children, about buying houses, about feeling invested. They're talking about gardening, growing gardens and growing your own food and taking pesticides out of food and eating holistically. This is crap that Democrats used to talk about. They're talking about being fit and in shape. And, you got Robert Kennedy taking the hormones and pesticides out of our food. This is stuff that the Democrats should be talking about. He's talking about ending wars. Why are we sending so much money to Ukraine? Why are we sending so much to Israel? Joe Biden just said, okay, we're going to send an endless amount of weapons and money to Ukraine. We're going to send an endless amount of weapons and money to Israel. Why is he the one saying this? And not only that, when Trump is betraying they've all turned on Trump. They all feel betrayed by Trump. And they're not afraid to call him out. Tucker Carlson's calling him out. Candace Owens is calling him out. All the MAGA base have no problems calling Donald Trump out. Because they said, you said you would end the wars. You said that you would be America first. Why are the Republicans getting to the left of you on these issues? Tucker Carlson said a few years ago something that sent chills down my spine. He said, whoever figures out how to make sure that young people can get married and have children and live a good life and just buy a nice house, they will be the ones who control the future in this country. And God help us all if it's the Republicans or the right in general. God help us all. If they like, well, because look, I'm no fan of Tucker Carlson. He has some serious racist, xenophobic views that I don't agree with whatsoever. And that's why this scares me. He should not be the one making this argument. This should be the main arguments of the Democratic Party. Not orange man bad, not trans volleyball players in bathrooms, not abortion, not the gay stuff, this type of stuff. This type of stuff is what people on the left should be talking about. And he has no problem revolting against Donald Trump to make these points, which is something, again, the Democrats punish anybody who revolted against the party. Anybody who revolted against Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, you get punished. We're at a point now where the Republican is the Democratic Party, much more than the Democrats, who didn't even allow a real primary to happen. The Democrats are about symbolism, about, oh man, here's Juneteenth as a holiday. Here's a new flag for this holiday, or we're going to put a pride flag up at the White House. They're talking about border security. Screw diversity, screw all the symbolism. They're talking about border security. They're talking about ending wars. They're talking about people being able to buy houses and get married. And if they have to go against Donald Trump to say these types of things, great. But the people who represent us here in Northwest Indiana, which is a heavily Democratic area, and especially nationally, are dropping the ball in letting the Republicans, people on the right-wing influencers, and the people around, even if Trump himself is seems to be alienating his own base at this point, the people around him seem to be learning, and they seem to be understanding how they're going to completely control our political system for a long time to come if y'all don't do something. And this is why I'm always, let me just say this. This is why I'm always happy to have, I said this a few weeks ago, when we have Republicans in here, they talk policy. They talk about taxes. They talk about business. Do I agree with all their prescriptions? No. I'm a populist. Again, I'm a New Deal, Great Society populist. Okay? I'm a Franklin Roosevelt guy. A Lyndon Johnson guy. New Deal, Great Society. Those are my North Star, generally speaking. But they're talking about it. And if some of the things they support work, okay. And it brings more jobs here, okay. At least they're talking about it. They're not just saying Trump is evil, Trump is Hitler, abortion, there's not, fascist. No, they're talking about actual things, actual policies, actual things that need to be done to improve the lives of people here in Northwest Indiana and around the country. We're at the point where the Democratic Party is not even the party of the intellectual people or the people who are concerned with, policy anymore. They're just the Trump is bad, diversity, inclusion, symbolism, flags, party. I mean, they've been calling out the pedophilia, even when it comes to stuff like pedophilia. I remember when Sound of Freedom came out last year, or the year before last, I think, you had so many people, the mainstream of the corporate liberal Democratic Party, calling it a conspiracy theory. Oh, the idea that wealthy elites are trafficking children. Oh, it's these crazy QAnon people, Now, you want to pretend that you care about the Epstein files. Well, again, Tucker Carlson's getting to the left of you on this too. He's talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and he's talking about Israel and the power they have over our government. Again, where are the Democrats to say this?
The real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things. Murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born here. My family's been here for hundreds of years. I love this country. That's why I live here. So criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater. It makes you a free person. It makes you a citizen. You're allowed to do that because you're not a slave. You're a citizen. And you have a right to expect that your government will not act against your interests, and you have a right to demand that foreign governments not be allowed to act against your interests. That's not creepy. It shouldn't be forbidden. And yet all of us have trained ourselves to believe that you can't say that somehow, that that's like too naughty and forbidden. And the effect of making that off limits has been to create a lot of resentment, and I'll say it, hate online, where people feel like they can't just say, like, what the hell is this? You have the former Israeli prime minister living in your house. You have had all this contact with the foreign government. Were you working on behalf of Mossad? Were you running a blackmail operation on behalf of a foreign government? By the way, every single person in Washington, D.C. thinks that. I've never met anyone who doesn't think that. I don't know any of them that hate Israel, but no one feels they can say that. Why? And I think the longer that we play along with it, the more subterranean and creepy and hateful the conversation actually becomes. So I think it's better just to say it right out loud. Did this happen? And of course that question has been asked to the government of Israel, and their answer is, we're not going to tell you. And I think our answer should be, no. As long as we're sending you money, if you were committing crimes on our soil, we have an absolute right to know, did you do this or not? And yet everybody has been so brainwashed into thinking that's somehow an expression of hate or bigotry, when it's not. It's a baseline question that every U.S. citizen has a right to an answer on. What the hell was this? And by the way, if it turns out that it was nothing.
Yeah. So again, Tucker Carlson sounding like leftists sounded for many years, questioning Israel. I remember, probably right-wingers turning on Israel is the thing I never thought in a million years would happen, but here we are. Here we are. You know, Donald Trump is deeply out of step with his base. He's deeply out of touch with MAGA, particularly people under 50. This is what they sound like. Meanwhile, you got the hottest young star the Democrats have had maybe in a decade, maybe since Barack Obama, who just won a primary in New York City, and all the mainstream corporate liberal Democrats can do is ask him, do you apologize for not condemning the saying, globalize the intifada? He never even said it. They want him to apologize for something he never even said. This is where the next generation of people are going. They don't love Israel like that. That's baby boomers and silent generation folks. People under 50, 60 years old are not obsessed with Israel like that. And again, you cannot let this guy be the one, and let people like him be the ones to make this case to the American public. He is the last person you want to be the one to make this case to the American public if you are somebody who is far to the left of center. Because again, they will take these sentiments and they will dominate government for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Because it's the truth. These are facts. If you're a Republican, you can say this. If you're a Democrat and you say this, they call you an anti-Semite like they did Zoran Mondani. Even Bernie Sanders, the most popular politician in this country for many years, look it up. He won the poll for many years as the most popular politician in the world, who's Jewish, is afraid of Israel. He's afraid to criticize Israel. Most of the people on MSNBC, on CNN, Joy Reid lost her job. Joy Reid lost her job, more than likely because of her criticism of Israel. Mehdi Hassan, more than likely, lost his job because of his criticism of Israel. So even on the supposed left-wing channel, which it's not, but if you know that it's not, but you can't criticize Israel without being kicked off the air. In Democratic spaces. I understand Republican spaces, but Democratic spaces? And now, again, the right are coming back and saying, you know what? Maybe we don't like Israel. Maybe we shouldn't be letting our government be controlled by Israel. Maybe they are blackmailing our politicians. MAGA's making that argument more than the left is. Why? Why? You know? And again, this is a heavily Democratic area. It really is. This is a very heavy Democratic area. I've yet to see too many politicians, Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana, who vote for these things, who vote to send all these weapons over there overseas to Israel, vote to send these weapons over to Ukraine and whatnot, question any of this. And now you're going to have a whole new generation of Republicans who are going to run for Congress or who are going to be in Congress, especially once Trump is gone. And you know, he's going to be gone one way or the other. You know, if you listen to this show, you know I think he's not going to live through this term. I just don't see him living to 2028, or should I say 2029. I'm sorry, 2020. Wait, 2020. Yeah, 2029. I guess he'd have to live to fully serve out this term. This should scare the hell out of you. This really should. At a certain point, we got to start holding these politicians accountable who call themselves Democrats but do the bidding of the military-industrial complex and AIPAC. We have to stop supporting these people. Let me get this phone call. Hello, caller. What's up?
Well, hello. Wow. Fantastic show.
Well, thank you.
As always. You know, I'm really familiar, man. I've been talking about this stuff for 30 years. And it gets diverted. I mean,
yep.
Again, you mentioned you mentioned bring up something that's actually has a criminal intention, that's corrupting, and somehow we won't talk about that. Let's talk about, you know, how the girl was looking all breasty, or who won the last game. Mm-hmm. But the stuff that matters, we don't have a clue about it. If you talk about it, you're out in left field somewhere.
Yep.
And you present a scenario, I hear it, and I've been watching this stuff since I came back from Nam in 70. You know, so I answer questions different than maybe the average person might, because I've never been a groupie or a rah-rah or a cheerleader. I believe human rights is where we need to be talking about, and civil rights have to be there. And we don't talk about it. And what you're talking about, the New Deal, these guys call communism.
Yeah, they do.
And so when I listen to guys like the last guy in the last show was talking about communism as if it's some foreign entity, if you checked out Wisconsin was a heavily democratic social place for probably 75 years until Reaganomics happened.
Yep, I say it all the time.
That's right. And so all the guys that used to be in favor for human rights, civil rights, they all jumped on the Wall Street wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And so now most of the folks that are doing the preaching, they're all getting tax breaks.
Yep.
Everybody's doing it for money, so they're not devoting themselves to helping their community better. They're trying to make some money there so they can make some more dough.
Yep.
We need employment. You need employment so the persons that haven't got the academic ladder can have a living job so they can buy a home. Not just the guy that spends $100,000 to go to school.
Yep.
This is like completely bum backwards.
Yep.
Our society, most of these schools are what are we called? I forgot what they're called, but they're basically tax dollars built down.
Mm.
And so how do you privatize something we already paid for?
Yep.
We don't own the water.
Nope.
A foreign company's going to let us have water or not.
Yep, we certainly do.
Our infrastructure, our education system, it's like how much money we're going to get.
Right.
Well, my kids learn how to read when they were before they were in kindergarten. They were reading already.
Mm.
I'm just a knucklehead, man. I've just been out here working all my life. And I'm just saying, you educate yourself. Teachers just inspire you to learn.
Mm.
And it's not about demand and obedience. And that's what these guys, all the business guys go, well, we got to demand, performance. Anyway.
Well, thank you for your call, brother. Thank you for your call.
It, brother.
It's always good. You always bring it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I just had to get that off my chest. Because ultimately, like I said, this is a battle for the soul of America. Whoever will find a way to make the argument to American working class people that they will make a way for high school educated Americans to have a living wage job, be able to get married, have kids, buy a nice house, the same way, my father was able to do, the same way everybody in this region were able to do with steel jobs 50, 60 years ago, whether it's Republicans, whether it's Democrats, whether it's some new party that hopefully will come along and knock both the Democrats and the Republicans out. That's what I'm hoping for. That's who will control the future. That's who will control this future of this country of ours. And so we got to get on our P's and Q's and hold these people accountable before we go obsolete here. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about another issue that involves our politicians and what they're possibly signing us up for that may not be the best thing for us, may or may not be the best thing for us. I'm talking about the data center. Talking about the data centers that are popping up all over this country and now coming to this region. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back after these.